Hello and welcome to Terrain Oddity. My name is Jay and today I'm going to be destroying a Millenium Falcon and making terrain from it. Now this isn't really a tutorial because I doubt you could buy the Millenium Falcon that I had very easily. It was basically a Nerf gun version of it that I picked off eBay for about 25-30 quid, but it was too big and had a couple of issues which I will talk about in a minute. And basically I decided I was going to try and make some like crashed ship terrain. This is just one piece of it, obviously the front. And as I said, it's not really going to be like a tutorial. It's just going to be a, hey, I built this. I did try some new stuff and there might be things that you can take away from this, but as I said, it's not really a tutorial. Anyway, so what I'll do is I'll play the bit of me talking about the big ship. I will then talk through the process of what I did, and then at the end we'll have like, you know, pictures and that kind of stuff. And I'll talk briefly about I wasn't very happy with the toy. So it's trying to look on the bright side and taking things that you're not happy with and making things that you are happy with. And I'm pretty happy with the way that this kind of stuff looks. So let's crack on. So I bought this this Millenium Falcon. I was like, oh, it looked great on the pictures, etc. But there are a couple of problems with it. And the problems mainly are it's a toy. And you can press these buttons. That happens if you do that. There's another one at the front here. You press this. It does that, and the back comes off, like so. Which, all in all, is reasonably cool. Unfortunately, it's not that great as a terrain piece. I definitely wouldn't want my models to go on there and then accidentally press the button and them fly off. And the extra little buttons at the sides are just annoying. So, I'm going to take this saw and chop it up into bits. So what I'm hoping to do is, now I could, in theory, just have this piece as its own. This little back bit here is going to be a problem because it's just a cheap sticker. But I basically want to cut off here, the back side, and I'll have it angled up like that, stuck in the ground, and then probably the front bits here, so maybe something like here and here. And I'm just going to take a saw to it. It's a crap little saw that cost me a couple of quid, but I'm just going to try and saw it into bits, and preferably at certain angles. But what I'm going to do is set up the camera and just saw it in the house because it's raining outside. So as I said, I then took to sawing it. Now this saw was not a great saw to use for this kind of stuff. I know I can't remember the names of the saws, but there are better versions out. You know, the ones that are just pure like metal. Apparently they're better. But yeah, and I just took to sawing it. So I started off doing the piece that I showed at the start, which is the you know, the front end of this Millenium Falcon, and quite frankly, by the end of doing all this sawing, I'd literally like caused a blister that had popped on my finger because I was like trying to do it, and it was just so high, it was so difficult to actually cut. Certain bits of it was impossible to cut because they had really dense, thick plastic, and certain bits were a bit easier. Now, I will warn you, I did all this to cut the front of this bit off. And then I had an idea when I tried to cut the back end off and it just wasn't happening. I was like, I'm really not going to be able to do this with this saw. Like I was tempted to give up and was frustrated at this point. And then I had the bright spark idea of, well, what happens if I just unscrew it? It's a toy after all. And if I unscrew it, this thing was in two parts. So basically the plastic was thinner. Instead of trying to cut through both parts at once, it was just a lot easier to cut through one part and then cut through the corresponding place on the other half. So yeah, I should have done that sooner. It made the whole thing a lot easier. But yeah, then I just did exactly what I said I was going to do. There was a couple of things that I wanted. So I wanted the two front parts of the Millenium Falcon, and I wanted the big back sorcery bit, the round back end of it, because I thought, you know, they're reasonably iconic and I want those. And so the back bit I was a bit worried about because it was going to be quite difficult to saw, but once I'd unscrewed it and you know, was just cutting one half and then cutting the other half, it went a lot easier. I was getting white dust absolutely everywhere. I would have done this outside, but it was raining in the UK. It's either raining or blistering sun in summer, and that's just the way it goes. And a lot of what I was doing was to shape the angles of which the terrain would sit. So I had in my head that I wanted one of the front pieces to be like stuck up out of the ground, and the back piece I wanted to be like angled into the ground, and then I was going to like do like a mud effect around it. So I was cutting the plastic when I was doing this to try and like get those angles, whether or not that was, or maybe on the bottom I would cut more than I did on the top, so it would hang over and I would have that natural shape to it. There was I didn't record absolutely everything there, but you can see this was the pile that I ended up with. I wanted little bits, and I could actually go back and get little bits because I'm going to store like the rest of this. I probably didn't make enough, but quite frankly, it was one of those projects where I'd injured myself and I was getting frustrated and I just wanted it to be over. So everything you see there is basically what I ended up with. I still have an absolute shed ton left, but it's just, you just get to a point where you're like, I want to get some of this finished. So I had this idea I wanted it to stick up. I wanted like some of the terrain to look like it was stuck in the ground, and I was going to use sculptor mold only to do that. So I thought, I'll get some baking paper, non-stick paper, just get some sculptor mold on there, and crack on. However, I very quickly realised whilst I was putting this on the sheet, I was like, yeah, this isn't going to stick. And not only is it not going to stick, it's a terrible idea for a base. It just doesn't. Well, it might work for some people, but it just didn't work for me. So I very quickly ran and cut out a piece of like EPVC, just in a vague general like circle for it. Not a circle, rectangle, rounded rectangle, and just I hot glued my terrain on it first, and then I like propped it up with the sculptor mold, putting a lot of it on the bit that was overhanging. And then basically the sculptor mold, I just pressed it around the terrain. It's hard to explain, but I just sort of, imagine if the top of the terrain was a volcano, I'd made like a pile around it. You'll see what I mean in the video. And for this piece, for this front bit, I was actually using actual sculptor mold, and for the other pieces, I was using Luke APS modeling compound. Now I won't go into too much detail, but technically the sculptor mold is actually cheaper because you're buying it in a bigger quantity. You have to pay like £12. It's actually cheaper per gram or what have you than like the 500 gram bags and even the 1 kilogram bag. But the stuff essentially acts very similar, but I found maybe the modeling compound to be a little bit bittier, but no massive difference, I guess, in this project. And so then I went on to the big back end saucer, and in my head I wanted this to be on foam because I didn't want to use my expanded PVC plastic base because I'm like, that's a bit expensive and this would be a big piece, whereas this foam actually wasn't that expensive because I got a massive sheet of it for like £7 or whatever it was. But I do actually wish that I just did it on the PVC because I had a bit of a problem with the sculptor mold sticking to very sharp edges. On the EPVC, it was a lot easier to stick. On this stuff, when I carved it all out, it was just a bit of a pain. So I just got a big piece, trimmed off the base so that it was like going to fit nicely. I also cut in divots so that the terrain would physically stick into the board a little bit, because quite frankly, I didn't get a nice like edge on some of it just because of the way that the plastic was cut. Before I did all of this, I actually went over some of the really straight edges on some of the pieces, like that would be like pure unnatural straightness, and I just sort of sawed them at slight angles so nothing looked like proper right angular or like it looked like it had crashed. Basically is what you're going for. You don't want pieces that look completely undamaged, which probably would happen in real life, but it was just easier to do it like that. Anyway, so I carved my divots in. I think I tried to hot glue it into the board as well. Carved out the base, or I just sliced it so I had my foam in the right size, and then I beveled the edges. Now I didn't bevel the edges for the first piece because I just didn't have time, but I would recommend doing that. And so I just beveled the edges, and I'm pretty happy with that. Like, you could probably just sand it up and paint it and leave it there, put like a bit of sculptor mold to blend in the gaps and be done. But I was trying to use the sculptor mold / modeling compound. I'm just going to call it sculptor mold because it's too awkward to use two names. And I wanted it like all the way. I wanted it to be a big mound of dirt. So I did that. It just had a bit of difficulty sticking to the like almost like 80-degree angles. And if you don't let it, if it doesn't dry, it like chips off very easily. But once it's dry, it's like pure hard. So maneuvering this thing was a bit of a pain in the backside. For the sculptor mold for this, so obviously we're just piling it up. You can see maybe for the tail end of the Millennium Falcon, there was bigger gaps to the sides just because of the way that I cut it. So they required more sculptor mold, modeling compound, and yeah, you just build it up, and you can already see like it's looking reasonably nice. It's looking reasonably nice. I would say with the modeling compound, it sort of dried a bit quicker initially, and then took a bit longer than sculptor mold, if that makes any sense. The usability time was perhaps a little less, unless maybe you added a shed ton of water, but then you have even worse drying times. Yeah, just bulk it up. Once you're happy with it, like let it dry. The sculptor mold probably going to take like 2 days to fully cure. I wanted some bits that were just pure wreckage. So for the wreckage areas, I did essentially what I did with my earlier terrain. I just got some sculptor mold, whacked it on the base, and then shoved in some of the crashed ship pieces. Now I sort of went with 2 different designs. I went with like a design that's sort of like light cover for Star Wars Legion. But you could also, I also did one which had like bigger pieces, which is sort of like heavy cover. But there's no, I just wanted it to be different covers, and I just matched it up with my game. For this like heavy bit, I quite like it because I've taken like the circular bit off one of the sides. I've taken the satellite dish off the top. Yeah, it'll look pretty nice. To get rid of the big flying sorcery like sticker that I mentioned at the start, which was just blue, which technically you would have a grill and it would be off, I just painted it black and it looks fine. I just did 1 or 2 layers of black and it was fine. Once I'd got everything essentially the way all glued in and in place, I made myself like a really watered down black wash, which initially I made a little bit too watered down, but then I sort of like corrected. It's literally just black water and black paint and water, and I did that on the freestanding piece, because the freestanding piece which doesn't have a base, I figure some of it would just land on top of things rather than being impaled in the dirt, so that's why I wanted to do that. And the black wash, I've got to say, made a real difference because a lot of the panels were just sort of flat. Like the crevices didn't have much shadow because it's a toy, and the black wash really it just made it so much better and a bit like so much more realistic. I was quite lucky that the sorcerer bit looked quite good anyway, but the black wash just really made things pop out a little bit. Now hopefully I can show you the difference between one that had the wash and one that hadn't. Once I'd finished with the wash, all I wanted to do then, and I was just wanted to try things out, I painted the whole thing, like the whole ground coverage brown. I really missed a few steps because I watered the brown bit a bit too much and it didn't get into crevices and etc. But paint all of the sculptor mold / modeling compound brown, because we're going to go over it with tile grout. Now tile grout isn't usually used as its base covering on its own. A lot of people will mix this with, and I know Luke KPS, he does this quite a lot. He'll mix this with garden soil or dirt or whatever it is, and a bit of maybe some pigments if you want to get a specific colour. Now, I wanted to try that, but I didn't want to have the dirt, mainly because I don't have easy access to the dirt in my garden. And I wanted to just look like, I thought, instead of it looking like ground coverage, I wanted the tile grout will just make it look like, fresh dirt. Yeah, I could age it up if I wanted to by putting like fauna around it, but I thought, we'll try tile grout and we'll see if it looks like fresh dirt. But you need a cover of brown first, because some of it, otherwise the underneath colour will show through a little bit and make it a little bit like splotchy. So I painted everything brown, which took a while just because it's the big pieces. I wasn't really too worried if I got some on the ships, not really too bothered about that. And then it's a case of just getting the tile grout on it. So I'm just using like this brown tile grout that I got for like £7 from B&Q. I did PVA and a bit of water on my brush, brushed it in everywhere. This tile grout is such a pain in the bum to use. Like if you get it on your hands, you'll transfer it to everything, and it's such a fine like dust that things sort of stain, but not necessarily permanently. They act sort of like pigments, if that makes any sense. They just like stain stuff and it looks like brown dust, which actually had a nice effect on some of it. I've got brown dust on some of these pieces still, just where either my hand has rubbed it or I've glued it to the ship, etc. But yeah, it works, but I just wanted it to look different from say like sand that I'd painted brown. but you know, ultimately I'm not sure this was the best thing I've ever done. Maybe mixing it with dirt, which would add maybe like larger pieces, would be better. But as I said, I PVA'd it, put the tile grout on it. I sprayed it with I had a little bottle of isopropanol, like I'm sure water and a bit of salt would work, just whilst it was drying, just so I could like make sure it had soaked through. And then once that had done, I'd sprayed it with watered down PVA once it had dried, just to try and make sure it definitely had sealed in. Now that did have probably the disadvantage of sealing in some brown spotches that had got into places that I shouldn't have done, but you know, that's just the way things go. And then once I'd done it, it was a little bit lighter than I liked the look, but it was a little bit lighter than I wanted. So I did make myself up like a burnt umber wash. Now the problem I had with that is I made it a bit splotchy, because whilst I was doing it, I occasionally would like change the amount of brown paint to water ratio, just because I needed to make more as I was going. So I did make it a little splotchy, which I was a little bit unhappy with, but ultimately I think it gives it a really nice effect. And when you do spray it with watered down PVA, just make sure you damp off the paint for the glue from your like flat panels on your terrain, because that will be a pain. But yeah, like I did my brown wash and I'm pretty overall very happy with it. I'm sure if I spent more time I could make it better, but yeah, I took something that I wasn't enjoying and made something I do enjoy. As I said, I will post like pictures and stuff like that. I don't really have a good board to show this off. I don't have like a green board. I don't want to get my mat out of the loft because it'll take me quite a while to get out. So I don't really have that. You'll just have to make do with it on the brown. But the brown picture that I will show you, you can sort of see the texture of ground painted, like sand painted brown, as opposed to this sort of like actual mud look. Now I wanted it to be so that I could essentially use this as either a recently crashed ship for Star Wars Legion, a recently crashed ship for Star Wars Legion, or if I really wanted to like decorate it up, you could sort of say it's been there a while, put like some flock on it or what have you. I'd go with a freshly crashed ship. And yeah, as I said, I'm actually much happier with it now than I was. There are things I could improve for sure. Like I didn't get my brown paint everywhere. My wash wasn't particularly great. I've got a bit of tile grout on things that it doesn't belong. Like I didn't do it perfectly, but ultimately I have like a reasonably decent set of terrain. Now this I've put on like a kill team / Warcry size board just to show you how much I've got. A bit of the more of the scatter terrain where it's just like bits of wreckage probably would like I have so much of the ship left, so in reality you would have a lot more of the ship. I'm just going to pretend like it's all underground because I'm lazy and can't be bothered. And on those bits I possibly would have done even more like ground coverage to make it look like things had got stuck in a little bit more. But as I said, I could criticize my work all day. Ultimately though, I took something when I bought it. I sort of impulse bought it off eBay because I was like, oh, that looks good. And then when I got it, you press the buttons and the thing would flip open, and I was worried if somebody put the model on it and then like accidentally pressed the button, which I was accidentally pressing the buttons quite a lot, the models would like fly off. I was like, I really don't like it. And it was very big. Like to have that on the table would have dominated a section, which is fine, but it's just a bit like, well, it's that or nothing. Whereas now I feel like it's got a bit more utility. Yes, if I want line of sight blockage coverage, I can use just the saucer of it. You know, if I want area cover, I've got my little light cover / heavy cover bits, and I've got the freestanding bit. There's a bit of the canopy of the cockpit that I've got, which I think also looks good. But basically, this was a project where I took something that I really was like unhappy with. I didn't want to sell it on eBay because it came in a massive box. I would have had to pay the shipping and stuff like that. It's not that I was really unhappy with it. That's a lie. It actually looked good, but I personally wasn't happy with the toy nature of it. It's a really good scale fit. I never mentioned that at the start. The actual ship I bought fit really well into the Legion universe. But the toy, I didn't want to have people's models come around and me accidentally press the buttons and then pop off. So it was plaguing my head. I was literally getting to the point where I was tempted to just throw it away because I was like, I don't want to spend money to ship it, and I don't want to store this massive ship. So I was like, I might just throw it. And I was like, well, no, right, we'll take it. We'll just wreck it. We'll damage it and see what happens. And now I'm really happy with it. I think I've turned something I didn't like into something I did like, and hopefully that's the moral of this little build story. I know it's not the usual video. It took me a while to do, number one, because they've been big pieces and just having time. And also, I've been doing a lot of Warcry videos, so my terrain videos have sort of taken a little dip at the moment. Don't worry, I have plans for terrain going forward almost indefinitely. And so many ideas in so little time, essentially, is the problem. But yeah, I've turned something I didn't like into something I'm happy with, and hopefully you guys enjoyed coming along for the process. I will try and do these videos maybe a little bit better going forward. I don't know if you see like other YouTubers and they do like cool music and sweeping shots and all this kind of like cool stuff, and I'm just like steady cam, this is what I did, boom boom boom. I think I can probably improve there, but that's the end of this. I'm almost like bro-fisted like I'm PewDiePie. But yeah, I'm really happy with the outcome. I can store it a bit easier because I can carry it into my loft a bit easier, and I think it's going to look fantastic on a like Legion board. Yeah, so pretty happy with it. Yeah, as I said, there are problems, but ultimately pretty happy. So if you like this video, do like. I'm not sure it's the kind of video people would be like, I loved it, but make sure if you're interested in terrain, not just Star Wars Legion, all kinds of terrain, I'm doing everything. Make sure you do subscribe if you want to hit the bell button, because you'll be like, I see the video, so the first. I go Spanish. Every time I say that at the end of a video, I just randomly go into a stupid accent. Not that the Spanish accent is stupid, more my interpretation of the accent. No apologies. No apologies. Many apologies. I'm having a good time at the end of this video. Have a beautiful day. Goodbye.